Hey, this is Kyle Crawford from Strong Dads. Strong Dads podcast would love to thank the Crimers Beer House for coming alongside of us. The Crimers Beer House was started in 1982 by the Crimer family, and since that time, they have definitely become a Cincinnati favorite. So if you're looking for an incredible meal in an incredible setting, definitely go down to Route 128 and check out the Crimers Beer House. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another show here. Doing another show at Strong Dads. Merle, first off, welcome back to the show. Excited to be back with you.
Don't bang the table like that. It comes right through.
I was gonna ask you how are you doing? There's been some big developments here.
If you live in the Cincinnati tri-state area, man, you're on cloud nine. You're on cloud nine. We are living a once in a lifetime event. I mean, we at least get cicadas like every 14 years. I mean,
yeah.
We got cicadas this year and the Bengals.
Oh, the Bengals.
The Bengals.
For those of you who are not listening in real time here and current date, the Bengals are going to the Super Bowl. The fact that you say Super Bowl and the Bengals together it's kind of crazy, right?
Oxymoron. It has been great. So, but I feel a little guilty.
Uh-oh. Why is that?
Well, you know, for the last couple of years, I've been complaining about my knees hurting so bad.
I do, yeah.
I realized about a year ago that the reason why my knees hurt so bad is because I've jumped off and on the bandwagon so many times I've wore my knees out. Yeah. And now I'm back on.
I just can't for the life of me jump on Merle. I've never been like a diehard Bengals fan.
Oh, really? Not even when you were a kid?
No.
Well, yeah, I guess you grew up kind of in an era where there was no fruit.
Let's hear perspective here. I was born in '88.
Okay. Oh, wow. So you're the reason.
So I'm the reason, right? So 33 years ago, the Bengals, 32 years ago, because it was the '88-'89 season, right, that they went to the Super Bowl. So it's on me, right?
Gosh, I never realized I needed to bow down to you for that.
Well, I love it. I think it's really good for the city. It's awesome to see some success come from a team that's has not had it for a while.
You know what I'm loving? Like, I'm listening to some sports radio stuff, and these people they're interviewing are just like, I've always been a Bengals fan. Yeah. I've been a lifelong. I've never wavered. I'm like, give me a break. If you've lived in this town, I mean, the stadium was empty for about 10 years. So don't even tell me, like, I never wavered. I had to give up being a fan because they were ruining so many of my Sunday afternoons that I would end up being angry or just like, oh, I wasted another Sunday afternoon. And so, you know, I'm not going to allow people to beat me up for that like I'm fair weather. But, you know, because time is valuable. Yeah. And it's like, you know, I'm not – if you sat around and endured all that, you have no life.
I know a guy who, for just similar to what you were saying, the longest time he's like diehard Bengals fan, right? And then he's like, screw it, I'm done.
I can't waste that time.
So he switches over to Tennessee Titans, right? So and he goes to the game. He's at the game with the Bengals versus Tennessee, and he's got all his Tennessee gear on, right? He's in Tennessee, he's right at their home game, and then the Bengals win. So he's like, all right. So he takes all that off, and now he's back in the Bengals gear.
Well, anyway, you know, it is fun. One of the things we haven't seen in Cincinnati for a long time is some energy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, for that reason alone, I think you've got things like COVID that seem to suck the life out of things. You have politics, you have economy, all those things that seem to suck the life out of people's day. And now you've got it's really an interesting little phenomena of how you can pep people back up, how you can turn them around, even though it's a very superficial thing to a lot of people. The idea that you have something upbeat to talk about, it really does change the air. And so, you know what? Let's ride this. Let's have some fun with it.
I like it, yeah. So it is funny because I can't tell you the number of people I know that are like, you know, whatever, if they're a Bengals fan or whatever sports team they like, you know, whatever day they play, they're all excited about the game, and then if they lose, it's like, just die. Like they're just done. Like I can't function anymore. It's terrible. So yeah, I think it'll lead right into what we're gonna.
It actually does. So
it does.
Yeah, our topic today is about morale, poor morale. You know, that in the workplace mostly. That's kind of what we were talking about when we started to craft this show. And so the idea there was just talking about, like, you know, when you get into that funk when you're not quite sure whether you should stay with it, and so it really parallels pretty nicely to what it means to be a Bengals fan. So how about let's thank our sponsors, and then let's just talk about how we handle that as a strong dad in the workplace and the implications that it has in our family life, marriage, and everything else.
Cool. Let's do it. Yeah. So strong dads, we'd like to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for coming alongside of us. Casey's Outdoor Solutions, located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana.
Somewhere out there.
It's out in Indiana. Yeah, check them out. Let them know we sent you up there. Really do appreciate Casey's Outdoor Solutions for coming alongside of us.
All right. We also like to thank Crimer's Beer House, located down on 128 outside of Cleves, Ohio. So if you are looking for a great meal in a really super cool location, head down to Crimer's Beer House. I bet you they got a little bit of Bengals stuff going on down there. They got some TVs rolling.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. So, like we were talking about, the Bengal conversation actually is some good leadway into what we were talking about. We didn't plan it that way, but hey, it worked.
Who in the world would have planned the Bengals going to the Super Bowl?
Yeah. But I think, when you talk about sometimes you just talked about when we were coming into our show today, the idea that you have a bunch of rookies that just came into your firehouse. So I guess a class must have just graduated or something, and now they're coming into the firehouse.
Yep.
And how the morale just went up a big notch, right?
Yep.
And so tell me, what changed?
Yeah.
Right? You old men are still there. So,
Old men.
Yeah. Well, the old veterans. And you were saying, a couple months ago how the morale in the firehouse was not at its high.
Yeah.
All right. So what changed?
Yeah, so this is it's an exciting time for our department. We get rookies about once a year, depending on what firehouse you're at. Will determine if you're getting a rookie on that regularity. So yeah, we did a whole show on the idea of COVID and how the stressors that it brings.
Yep.
We've been just pounded with overtime, with getting guys mandated in. So there's been a lot of additional stressors on top of an already stressful job that we're currently dealing with. And yeah, full transparency, the morale in the Dayton Fire Department has not been very high. There's really no hiding it. Most of the guys feel the effects of it. I would say for the most part, we do a great job when we go out into the public to kind of, hide and keep that back in quarters, kind of keep our dirty laundry in the firehouse.
Right.
But yeah, the morale has not been good for a number of different reasons, and kind of brought some of the idea of this topic because of that. And yeah, so now we got a group of rookies that are coming in. They're excited to be a part of the Dayton Fire Department. They're enthusiastic. They're excited to get out there to learn how to be a Dayton fireman. And it's exciting for the guys who, are receiving a rookie at our firehouse, because now we get some fresh blood, right? We get somebody who's excited, and it kind of almost sparks a new life into the firehouse. And you get excited to show them how we do stuff, and they bring this level of excitement. So it's kind of the ebbs and flows of the day-to-day operations where you get stuck in this rut. It's the same thing every single day. And now all of a sudden you get this spike, right? You get this kind of adrenaline rush because you got someone who's excited to be there. So it really, it's sad to say that it takes a new person coming into our firehouse for the morale to increase. But in reality, I think that a lot of guys can relate to that. You get stuck in that rut, the day-to-day stuff every day, and then you get something new and excitement. You're like, all right, you wake up, and we're like, heck yeah, I can't wait to go to work, right?
Yeah. So what we want to talk about today is for you guys out there who you might find yourself in a little bit of a low, maybe a full-blown out depression in your job or your family or your marriage, and you're like, man, I just don't know how much longer I can do this stuff, right? And so that when I feel like I'm weathering the storm, even if I'm staying alive, it doesn't mean I'm living my best life.
Yeah.
So we're actually going to go through kind of a step-by-step process to help us recognize kind of what Kyle just recognized when the rookies came in, what actually is starting to change, and how can you be intentional about changing it? If the morale in my place or in my life is dropping, Like if I understand it and I'm intentional, I can move that process forward a whole lot better and more efficiently versus getting stuck.
Yeah.
Right. And so we want to help do that. So I put together an acronym. All right. You like when I do this. Okay. So you get together your pen or paper on this and just
pen or paper. What do we?
Yeah, just to jot it down, like so, because you and we don't remember anything.
I know, but most people don't use pen and paper tomorrow.
Well, you do. You don't even know how to use that stupid phone of yours. So come on.
This is true. I still use a pen and paper.
I actually do a lot. Like I always keep.
I know.
I keep a notepad handy
yeah.
because I don't know something about having to put it out through the fingertips. I don't know. It just seems.
I agree
100%.
I just know that there are a lot of guys out there that don't use pen.
Listen.
Anyways,
any way you need to get this recorded or written down. Okay. So it's called I.R.O.C. Yeah, that's cool right there, isn't it? I.R.O.C. P. D.A.N. I.R.O.C. P. D.A.N. That sounds like some kind of song, right? I.R.O.C. P. D.A.N. You got to give me some credit for that.
No.
If
you can come up with lyrics, I might.
All right. So the first thing, the I in the I.R.O.C. The I is you've got to call it out in terms of identify. You've got to identify. I mean, this is that thing when you don't identify, it's the same crap, different day sort of thing. You haven't done anything. You're just starting to see that the firehouse is the firehouse. Nothing's changing, but you're not really calling it a problem yet, right? You haven't identified. So you've got to identify it. We've talked a little bit about your firehouse things. Like you started identifying some of the reasons why the morale was dropping. Like, remember some of those reasons?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot, and I think when it comes to that identifying, as we go through this acronym, one thing I wanted to kind of bring to light, for me, I'm the bottom of the barrel, right? I'm a dumb fireman, right? And there's a lot
I knew that, but yeah.
There's a lot of steps that make, it's hard, because we can sit around and complain and we can identify and we can start to recognize what those things are. But the problem is where we always come back to is I don't make the policies, right? So I think it's important to kind of have that, I obviously, just like you were saying, identifying why the morale is what it is, identify the stressors that have brought you to this point. And I think it's really important to a great starting point. But I also think it's hard because if you're not the one making those, you can only affect the things you can affect, right? And so we talk about all the time. One of the things Jenny and I always teach our girls is you can only control the things you can control. And when you get outside of that, that's when you start to if you can identify all these other problems that are going on. But if it's not something you can fix, what's the point of identifying those problems? Let's fix let's identify.
Yeah, let's go where we can go.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the second letter there, R, is standing for the idea of recognize. All right, so that you've identified, but now you then have to recognize, and there's two key words here: the difference between perception and reality. All right. This is a huge deal in our life. I do a drill with people all the time, and it kind of blows their mind because they don't understand how they've allowed perception to alter their course of life and their moods, their actions, and so on. So I will get in a room and be in a coaching session, and this guy, whatever, he's down about something, okay, and I'm like, okay, I need to get him to see what he's looking at,
sure,
what his perception is, and I'll say, okay, I need you to stare around the room. I need you to look everywhere around this room, okay, and I want you to look for the color blue. And so their eyes will start darting all over the place, and they're looking for the color blue. All right, cool. All right, and then I'll say, okay, close your eyes, and then I'll say, okay, now name everything for me that you can that's white. They struggle, right? Why do they struggle? Because I was directing their perception. I was focusing them on the dark, on the blue, and that's all they saw. And then all of a sudden, when I made them have to try to see something, they didn't even know if it existed. And then I said, okay, open your eyes. And they'll see white all over. Oh, the trim's white. Oh, that picture's white. Oh, I'm wearing a white shirt. And they'll start to see things that have been there all along, but their hyper focus on the negative or the poor morale is where they choose to be. And I say the word choose because it is a choice. You can allow yourself to get drowned into that. And so the perception versus the reality. If you don't do a little study on that, you're going to find yourself getting kind of caught in the wave that gets you emotionally moving the most, right? And if you're, we've talked about wiring before, if you're wired to the negative, you're going to see the dark. Mm-hmm. If that's how you're wired, you're going to see the dark. Nothing works good here. This firehouse is a joke. This place, this guy's, okay, that's how you're wired, dude. That's what you're going to see. That's your perception. And it doesn't have to be your reality.
Well, this made me think of, when, I don't know if you've ever been a part of a group or whatever, and someone points out something. So this person does this, or, this firehouse has this. That's all you notice. Like from that point on, you're like, oh yeah, he does do that, or that firehouse is like that,
and
right?
That's all you can see,
and that's all you can see. And I think along with the idea of the perception versus reality, I also think there's a almost a third one, and it's what you perceive. So like how you actually see things. So your
interpretation of what you see.
Your interpretation, because what you see or your interpretation of it. It may be what your perception, right? But it is not that reality, because there's so much more that's going on. So so if a guy points out that Kyle's crazy sometimes, right? He's very very whatever. However, and that's all that person sees. The reality is, yes, I am a little crazy, right? But there's more to me than just being crazy, right? And I think that's where how you perceive the reality, I think it is also plays a big part into it.
Let me tell you, we use this all the time in our marriage work, because, when you first date your wife, is all you see are the attractive traits, right? And man, you can't wait to talk to her. You have a lot of fun with her. Your conversation just is great. And then all of a sudden, 15 years down the road, you're like, she's such a nag. She's on my butt all the time. I can't do anything right. It's like, did you change who you married? No. And that happens both husband to wife, wife to husband. And so that whole idea of us stopping it and then refocusing it, and that's a practice, because the longer I focus at something, the harder it is for me to get my eyes off of it.
Yep. Okay. Have you ever, the comedian Rodney Carrington? You ever heard of him? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not putting a plug for him, but he does a little part where he talks about his wife, right, or his girlfriend, or whatever it was at the time. He's walking around at the zoo, I think, and he's like, I just looked at her and realized, like, what am I doing with her? He's like, and then I walked home and I looked in the mirror and realized that I'm not all that either, right? So not only is your wife changing, but maybe it's you as well. Maybe there's something you're doing, or you're identifying, you're seeing her, and you're like, golly, she gets on my nerves because she does whatever, and that's all you focus on. When in reality, maybe there's some self-reflection. Maybe you'd be like, maybe I'm doing something. Maybe my mindset is incorrect because of the way I'm viewing it. Yeah.
So, we identify, then we recognize and spend some time with the perception and the reality. And then this is an active process, this next thing, the idea of options. I've got to now, if I'm going to say and admit that I'm recognizing that the morale is not good, then I have to start looking at the options available, okay? And this is where people will get stuck because they don't want to identify the options and pursue. Sometimes this is that comfortably numb, painful stage. Yeah, well, I could go get a job at a different firehouse, but I don't know, and so you just stay stuck. So you take that option off the board. It's like, well, no, you're just too lazy to say, okay, it's worth the risk for me to go look at another job. So you start looking at options, okay? And it's really worth it to make a little list. Like, well, I could do this, or I could do that. Or, I could make a change here, or add this, or take this away. But if I act like there are no options, I become a victim. Like, there's nothing I can do. I'm stuck, right? And I don't ever buy that. There's very few places in life that I'm just totally stuck. Even when I'm stuck, there's still a better way to be stuck.
Yep. And with this idea of the option, this is something that I continue to tell myself that, we've talked about the idea that the grass is not always green on the other side. right? So if you are making that list and you're coming up with different options that you do have, realize that if you go into those other options with the same mindset, the same negative attitude, that when you get to whatever place you're wanting to go to, unless you change your attitude, change your personal morale, then that place is going to have similar problems, because every place has problems, right? Every job, every industry has a long list of problems. And if you go into that thinking there are no problems, and then you get there and you see that there, it may be sunshine and roses for the first 6 months because you're excited, you're in a new adventure,
you're a rookie,
right? You're a rookie, right? Yeah, exactly. But if you don't change the way in which you address and you attack and your perception versus reality with that new option, you're going to be fall back right in the same trap you've been in.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just that whole idea of us. When I name those options, also look at who I am in that. Am I the person that it needs to look in the mirror? So good point. All right. So the C. So I.R.O.C. I.R.O.C. All right.
All right. I'm following now.
You're liking it, aren't you? Aren't you? Okay. The C. The C is to seek counsel. All right. I mean, especially as we do have to make what I would say heavier decisions in life. This is not about whether I want, a Coke or a Sprite. This is about, well, man, if I change this job, this could impact my life in a big way, negative or positive. So these are not light things. That's why the weight of them can pull your morale down, because that weight alone is hard to carry. So seek counsel. Talk to people that have been in your shoes or people who know you. We love to bounce ideas around in our house. Linda and I kind of use each other to kind of, seek counsel through each other, just to see, like I'll always say stuff like, okay, I'm going to run something by you, but I don't even want you to answer. Just I'm going to run it by you, and I want you to sit on it for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if she immediately blurts out an answer, I'll get an emotional. That's an emotional response, right? But I'll say, okay, I'm just going to float this out, and I want you to think about it. And then maybe tonight after dinner, let's just talk about it. And by then, we've filtered through some of the emotions, and then we kind of have some counsel going back and forth.
Well, not too long ago, when it comes to the idea of morale, you and I did this. We went on the golf course, right? And we
did not help my morale at all.
But it was that idea that what I perceive to be a reality. Sometimes it takes an outside perspective, that seeking that outside counsel, someone who can say, you present your case. So these are all the things that I'm frustrated with at work. And then someone who's not ingrained, not a part of the day-to-day operations that I am, can be like, all right, is it really that big? Is what you're talking about. So I think there's a lot that goes into seeking someone who can look an outside perspective, that I can say, okay, yeah, those are legit complaints. But what are you doing? And I remember you told me, like, okay, so stop sitting around the kitchen table and just complaining about it. Right. Actions keep those, not that those problems aren't there, right? That they probably are. But when you continually bring them up and continue to like woe on them, sure, that's feeding into that bad morale. So I think it's a great perspective and a great idea to seek someone who can have an outside perspective on what you're dealing with.
Yeah, I think it's just huge to be, and we have to, we all have to kind of walk through that process a little bit, because sometimes when we're complaining, we're actually just kind of processing, like, how messy is it, right? Yeah. But there has to be a season for it, and then you have to bring it to a closure. Otherwise, it just starts to rot inside of you. So we just need to be a little bit careful with how long we're going to stay in doing nothing and complaining.
Yep.
All
right. So now you're moving on to the P.
Going to the P.
I gotta go pee.
So the P is actually to pray. And the reason why we talk about praying is because Kyle, you and I have talked many times about how I have a human nature. And so my human nature answers things usually through my desires of my flesh. Well, will it be more comfortable? Yeah. Will I make more money? Right? Will I have more power? Okay, so these are a lot of human sort of things. And if I'm always answering the human flesh connection, and I'm not connecting to the spiritual part. And so the spiritual part is, well, did God make me for this move or this change? do I carry the gifts and the talents? And is this my season that I'm supposed to be here? Okay. So this morning I'm reading in Genesis about, when Joseph was sold by his brothers to the Egyptians.
Yeah.
And that just seems like such a terrible thing, right? The little brother gets basically kicked out and he's sold to the Egyptians. And then over time, he becomes the ruler, right? He becomes the ruler. And then years later, they reunite. Yep. And you could have thought that Joseph was going to go at them.
And he had to be, because they didn't even recognize him, right?
Yeah, didn't even recognize. And he could have just gone at him and had him slaughtered.
Yep.
But he says, he identifies himself like, I am your brother Joseph. And then he says, but don't be afraid. What happened had to happen.
Yeah.
In other words, he was like, I had to be put in here because this is where my spirit, where my gifts, where my talents had to flourish. And so, sometimes we have to go through a dark, painful, difficult situation. And again, nobody likes to stay there long. But when I take things into prayer, it allows me to say, you know what, God, this is what I want. I want my flesh to be quenched. I want these things. But what is your desire for me? All right. And let your will be done. I mean, and I think that's a legit prayer to humble yourself and settle in and see if you can get a sense of calm about that. Like, you know what? This is not the best place that I've ever been, but right now I feel like this is where I'm called to be.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the idea of morale and bad attitudes at work, this is something that I've seen guys do, and I've heard guys talk about this idea, just whatever, just throwing your hands up and I'm done, I quit, right? And when it comes to this idea of prayer, I think this is before the show we were talking, and last night in my small group we were actually talking about this very idea. Man, God calls men to work. Like, it's very clear throughout Scripture, and one of the verses we actually talked about was in Colossians 3:23. It says, "Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men." And man, I think when it comes to this idea of prayer and having that relationship with Christ, man, I think it's so important to realize that as bad as things are, right? Your workplace could really suck, and it could not be fun for you to come in every day. But when it comes to this idea of your spirituality and your relationship with Christ, it's so important to realize that you're not working for your boss.
Right.
Your boss may be the one that signs your paycheck, and he's the one that ultimately gives you your what you've earned, your paycheck, right? But man, to have a perspective, to sit back, that you want to talk about perspective versus reality, right? The reality is you are working for something so much bigger than just a paycheck, right? We even talked about last night in my small group this idea that if you are dishonoring towards your boss or you are trash talking your boss, you're dishonoring God. Like, God calls men to work and not work for man, work for him.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great perspective to have when it comes to this idea of prayer and your spirituality.
Yeah. So, vital part in that, think about that, put that into action. All right. So let's go to the D. All right. So I.R.O.C. P.
D.A.N.
And so D.A.N, the D is, come on already, make a freaking decision.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not really all of it, but the decision is the D. Make a decision, all right? Yeah. Make a choice. I think some of the problems that we have sometimes is not that we have no choices, but that we actually have too many choices. We have so many options available to us, especially today. I mean, the job market is crazy open. You could go do just about anything. Yep. You could work at home for the rest of your life these days, or you could go and job shop for the next 6 months until you found your niche, okay? But here's the bottom line. Make a decision. Yeah. Those of us who sit on the fence get nothing but splinters. We got to make a move, all right? And once you do that, there's a sense of ease that comes. Not ease in what you're getting ready to go into, but ease that you're now committing. Okay, like, I'm no longer on the fence. I'm getting off. So make a decision on what you're going to do to change the bad morale situation.
Well, that second part, the A in that, you've made a decision. It is time to get off the fence, right? So then that's where that's the call to action, right? So to sit there and to say, I'm going to do this, but then to never do it. So you've made that decision, but if you just just wander on that decision. You don't actually take an action, because I think every decision we make in our life requires some form of an action in order to implement that said decision. So if you're deciding you're going to stay in your position that you're in, or you're going to decide you're going somewhere else, you're using that, the options that we talked about earlier, man, then go do it, right? So if you decide you're going to stay in your current place of employment, then just by saying I'm going to stay here, but then you don't change anything, you're not going to it's not going to just be a switch and one day you're going to be happy and morale's going to be great in your place of employment, right? There has to be an action. There's a call to action here. And this is something I'm talking to myself, because I get caught up in the bad morale at work, and I get caught up in that. And I actually had this exact conversation with Jenny, like what's my decision going to be? And we decided, I'm going to stick it out for a while. I'm going to see. But if I continue down the same path, then the morale is never going to get any better unless I make a decision for myself, right? I'm a call to action for myself to ensure that I made this decision, and now I'm gonna put forth the best effort to ensure that decision is fruitful.
Right. And it doesn't guarantee an excellent outcome. What it does is it gives you an answer. Okay, I've given it my best. All right. So I answered that call. I'm still not happy with where I am, but I did the work. So now it's time. All right. And so it's not a matter of us saying, I'm going to put my nose down and never make a change. No, I do want to make sure that we say, this is not about you staying where you are. Not at all.
Yep.
This might be about you leaving absolutely where you are. The idea here is you going through the process and not getting stuck in the middle land. Okay. And because that's where that's bad morale land.
Yep.
So I have to do something, and whether it's locking in and staying where I'm at, or saying, you know what, sayonara, I'm out of here and I'm going to a new greener pasture. All right. That is on us.
Yep.
Okay. All right. How about the N?
Oh boy,
this is it right here, man. I'm just telling you, this is really the difference between the guy who has the happy life and the sad life. The N is never look back. And I mean that. I mean that. Never look back. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Man, if I would have done this, I should have done this, I could have done this. What a desperate, empty way to live. Get it out of your vocabulary. Once you make this decision and you start those action plans, it is what it is. This is where we are today. All right. And there's no guarantees that makes the road ahead easy. It just means that I'm not going to get my head stuck on the road behind me, that I'm no longer even walking. I don't even have time there anymore.
Yep. Well, this made me think, my youngest daughter does this a lot. She'll be walking and she's looking where she has been and not where she's going, and then she'll run into something, right?
Right.
And I think the same could be said about this. Like if you're always stuck in what you did or where you came from, and you're not looking forward to new things, because there's nothing that says that if you take a new job and you forget about the old job, there's nothing that says you have to stay in that position, right?
No.
You can move on from that, but if you're always living in your past, and there's nothing we can do about it, the changes we made. So once you make that change, I think it's so important to eyes forward, right? We talk about this all the time. When I remember running cross country, my coach would always say, eyes forward. Don't be looking back who you just passed, right? You passed that person, now move on, go chase the next person. And I think it is so true in the workplace, man. If wherever you came from, like, not to say you can't use that experience to better yourself in a future endeavor, but I think your eyes always have to be forward. You always have to be looking for that next adventure that you're going to jump into.
Yeah. Just recently this week, Tom Brady, I think, came out with his final decision.
Finally decide? Yeah,
okay?
I think so.
And we laugh at that, but I totally appreciate the process he's going through.
Yeah.
One, he had an incredible path he was traveling. Okay, so let's not dismiss that. It wasn't like he was on a crappy road, okay?
Yep.
So he had an incredible path. And so he is right here going through this process, all right? And before you think about, okay, make a decision, take action, never look back, you really have to do, wait, what's the perception? What's my reality? I really have to start weighing those out. And he's going through this process. And we've seen quarterbacks before. They retire.
Yep.
And then a year or two later, they try it one more time. That's how difficult this process can be.
Yeah.
Okay? So I'm not diminishing that. What I'm saying is you got to be active in it. All right?
Yeah.
But what happens almost always when quarterbacks come back? It ain't pretty, is it?
Not.
It ain't pretty because they're trying to recreate something that's already passed.
Yeah.
Okay, and they tend to say that. You'll hear them say like, I really probably should have never came back.
Yeah.
All right. And again, I don't know what Brady does in the future here,
Yeah.
but the idea here of him walking through this process is something that we should be thinking about for our own walk. We all have that opportunity to decide where we're at today, where we want to be. The bottom line is, what's your morale? What's your attitude? And if it's not where it needs to be, that's on you. That is on nobody else. If your life sucks, that's on you.
Yep.
All right. And that's plain and simple. And again, has my life ever sucked? Yeah. And it was on me. I have to make the decisions. And so hopefully that's our takeaway. John 10:10. Think about this. This is when you think about how Christ was talking here in John 10:10, he says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. Who's the thief? The thief is Satan, right? Satan wants you to be stuck. He wants your morale to be terrible. He wants your marriage to be lukewarm at best, okay? He wants you to get stuck there. But then the second part of this, but I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. When we just live in the way Christ wants us to live, we're looking forward. We are looking forward, and we're not letting the thief steal the opportunity for us to have a great and prosperous and abundant life.
Yep. So going back to the Bengals, right? So I think it's really cool. Just as we're talking, I started thinking, right before the first playoff game, all the announcers were like, these Bengals they don't know how to win, right? They've lost since the last playoff win they had was in the 90s, right? Early 90s. And then when you talk about a perception versus reality, the reality is not a single person on this current team had gone through that, right?
Right.
So if they were to live in their past, if they were to think, this franchise, this organization hasn't won since the 90s, they would have been stuck in that. But the cool thing is Joe Burrow and all of his swag, and he was like, you know what? None of us were. Heck, I wasn't even alive.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's so key.
And they just moved forward, and their eyes were forward, and they went out there and they did it, right? So
right.
I think when we talk about this idea of morale, if you get stuck in the past, just what we're talking about, never looking back. If the Bengals would have just been stuck in their past, then the reality would be their past, right?
Yeah.
But they changed the reality.
Yeah, the Bengals are more than just their history, right?
Yep.
They're the whole thing. And so I love the idea that, Burrow's like, well, I wasn't part of those teams.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I've been winning, so
Yeah.
I know what it feels like.
Yep.
So it's a great thing for us to be just taking in. So our challenge for you right now is start walking through the process. If you have noticed that you're in that funk, that not good place, that headspace that says, I don't know what's worth what, all right? Do not let yourself sit there. Move forward, walk through the I.R.O.C D.A.N, all right? And start getting things done. You owe yourself and your family a whole lot more than sitting around just moping.
Love it. Yeah, we appreciate you guys. Keep tuning in. We got some more good shows coming, some more stuff on work. We got a Super Bowl show coming up. Obviously, we're going to do a Super Bowl show.
We're going to pray for that one. We're praying for that one.
So we're really excited to keep putting out shows for you guys. I hope you enjoy this. If you do, share the heck out of it. We really need people to hear this message. If there's something that we're talking about, then you yourself need it, or someone who's going through something, man, share the show. Let our our platform, not the Merle and I or anything special, but let us hopefully start the conversation with you and whoever you're thinking of. We thanks so much for Kramer's Beer House and Casey's Outdoor Solutions for coming alongside of us. Go ahead.
I want to put in one last plug.
I like it.
Okay. So Linda and I are getting ready we're doing a pilot program for marriages.
That's right.
And what we're actually looking at are people who kind of had that low morale in their marriage. Okay. Like, maybe we're not quite on divorce doorstep here, but it's just not where it needs to be. And so we've talked about it before on the show, but the idea that we're starting what's called Rock Solid Marriages, which is going to be a 7-step process of how to basically take the action steps to get your marriage right. And so we are looking for couples right now to help pilot that program. The price is $749. Now that might seem crazy crazy, but that is about 10 to 12 weeks worth of work. Okay. And it's you're going to get one-on-one coaching. You're going to get group sessions where we come together. So there's going to be a lot of stuff. So if you had to pay for that over the course of 10 to 12 weeks, you'd be looking at well over $1,000. Okay. $2,000 or so. So it really is a great value, and you're going to be very much instrumental in helping yourself and us really work for you. Okay. Yep. So if you are interested, you and your spouse interested in trying to get the morale up in your marriage, contact me. Okay. Just private message me or email me and let me know, because we're going to take people up through all through February. And then pretty much after that, we're going to lock it down and start our pilot program. Okay. So you can get me at hutch@rocksolidfamilies.org. Don't let the morale continue to drop in your marriage.
I like it. Yeah.
I just had to go there.
I like it. No, I was going to say, I mean, if your marriage is struggling, then $749 is well worth the investment, right?
That'll be half the cost of what it is when it goes live.
And I mean, because last time I heard, divorce is a lot more expensive than that.
Well, that's our point, right? This is an incredible value. The amount of time that you're going to get in the work and in the coaching that you're going to get from Linda and I, you're going to definitely get your value. Linda and I want to make it a point that you get your value here. So, message me. Let's get you signed up. Let's get off of the bad morale train.
I like it. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, guys. Go out there and be some strong dads. Was that your stomach?
My stomach.
Golly, you even made the lights flicker.
Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.